11 years ago, almost getting on to almost to the month, someone told me about Bitcoin, and I was looking at it through a technologist's lens, and I thought of it having a 12-year roadmap, having seen things like MP3 files being, pirated on the internet to, the invention of the iPod and then having digital music everywhere. Took about 12 years. And I thought of Bitcoin at that time in like 2013 as, very similar to pirated MP3s, very rough around the edges. You'd do a lot of work, had a lot of promise. And I figured, well, if this does do the digital gold that it's trying to be, I'll give it 12 years. So that's the 2025, right? At end of 2025. So well, maybe it could flip gold by then, if that's the case. And back then I worked out it was roughly $500,000 Bitcoin. And that was the only reason I bought it. I just didn't buy much. I think I said, I'll just buy one coin. I think it was like $500 or whatever it was at the time. And I'll just get on with my life. And yeah, because I didn't want to be pissed off if it hit that and I saw it and it didn't happen. At least I have a $500,000 constellation price. So that was the start of it. And then later on, probably 2 to 3 years later, I'm starting to really get interested in Bitcoin. And you start to look at the data and say, wow, this thing is tracking. And if it succeeds, like if it flips gold, it's also flipping the US dollar. That means it's a global reserve asset. It could re-architect money. All these things fall out just from the number, go up, right, to that size. And then you can go back, all these things will have to happen. And it started to theoretically look real. Even 2015 to 2017, the numbers were so solid that back then it was doubling its adoption every 12 months. And you go, man, we're going to get to 1 billion people somewhere around the 2025. And so it just seemed outlandish. And so, yes, the numbers said this was possible. And the numbers said this is the best bet on the planet. If I said to you, you're allowed to put this dollar bet down, and if you win, I'll give you $100 or $1,000 back, or $10,000 back. And if you lose your $1. And the chances of you winning is more than 50-50. It's probably, by 2017, I would have put it at maybe at 80-20, 90-10. So it's like the best bet on the planet, and even today, we've still got at least a 10x, 20x to go. And the chances of it winning are, I think well north of 90%. So it's just a ridiculous investment proposition. And I agree, it's just really quite different to see it all happening. To see these guys like Larry Fink talk about Bitcoin as the future. I came back from Switzerland just last month and I posted, the chief investment officer of a boutique private bank. I go there every year because we're partnered with this bank. And last year we think Bitcoin is a really great investment. And here are the reasons why. 1 year later, the chief investment officer of this bank says, we think it's got the right properties right now to be the next global reserve currency. And it's quite a radical statement for a bank. You can see things flipping over. And my private banker there said, I don't believe in Bitcoin. That was last year. And he was like, I don't believe in Bitcoin. I just don't get it. And then 1 year later, he said, oh, I'm really bullish on it because he saw Blackrock was behind it. And he says, I know, I've been in wealth management for decades, his entire life. And he said, I know exactly how this works. Like, this is now going to be offered to the high net worth. It's going to be off to the wealth management circles. And then it's going to be continually marketed. And there's no stopping it, right? The marketing machine's going to drive this. And so he said, oh, yeah. he's now bullish, and that was a very quick flip from watching that for years to saying I don't get this stuff to seeing a marketing engine for TradFi push it into wealth management. He's seen that through decades and going, now Bitcoin's on the offering, and to put that in perspective, it's I think Bitcoin's trying to get past 2 trillion, and there's about 900 trillion of total global wealth. So little of it's been allocated, and it's so small that any bit of wealth that comes in, you get a 2x because you put 1 trillion in, suddenly Bitcoin sort of asymmetrically grows to another 2 million from the trillion you put in. So put 1 trillion in, it's 2, it goes to 4. And so it's going to grow quick.
What are you thinking about right now? Like, what are your thoughts on the current state of the Bitcoin market?
It's quite, every cycle, if there's one thing you can trust is it changes. And so, that hasn't changed. That I'm like looking at, what has changed with this market. Obviously, we had in the last cycle, MicroStrategy coming in with corporate treasuries. Futures was a big part of the last cycle, and institutional hedge funds coming in. And so I think this cycle, just looking at the impacts of I think the key impacts right now, MicroStrategy going on full flight on their Bitcoin acquisition, and then the Blackrock, in particular spot ETF, but the whole broad collection of spot ETFs coming in and offering a very efficient way for TradFi to buy in. And so that's really changing the structure of the market. So looking at that type of impact, and you can see also, I'm looking at just how heavily hit the altcoin space has been with so much capital coming into Bitcoin, not necessarily rotating into altcoins, and just how absent retail has been in this cycle. It looks like they're just starting to come in the last 4 or so weeks, but it's been a ghost town. So yeah, just very interesting to see how much of each, the structure of each cycle is changing, and probably the hidden side is I'm kind of trying to figure out if more of the sovereigns will come in, and maybe they are coming in, but quietly. So
it seems like potentially some people are resorting to buying like MicroStrategy derivatives, like those 2x long MicroStrategy things, or maybe even like Bitcoin ETF options. Do you think that's taking some thunder away from the altcoins, or is it just retail's not here yet and they're just taking their time?
I do think it's taking it away somewhat for one sort of class of investor that's got the brokerage accounts, probably much more experienced. It used to be if you wanted to get a gain on Bitcoin, you've got 2 options. One is to take leverage risk and risk liquidation, or you rotate into altcoins, particularly when it was a bullish setup and Bitcoin was sort of tracked under resistance. People would rotate into altcoins to get that extra pump, extra beta. And you're not seeing that this cycle. And if you look at you rotate into altcoins because you get extra gain on Bitcoin historically with no liquidation risk. Effectively buying something like a MicroStrategy or a MicroStrategy on 2x is producing the same sort of zero liquidation risk environment, but if anything, you're getting the same kind of magnified returns if you time it right. You got to still be careful with MicroStrategy because there is that kind of premium to NAV, like the underlying Bitcoin valuation, and so that could completely collapse if you think that you're buying it at a particular price, whatever it is. Let's say it's $450 and it's trading 3x its underlying Bitcoin valuation, then you're going to get a 67% pullback if the market turns bearish. So at an extreme case, so that's kind of similar to what you're going to get on altcoin. At least that capital is going into the underlying asset of Bitcoin, which is driving the entire ecosystem, and it's not being siphoned off into 10,000 projects, of which probably only the the top 5 or the top 1 or top 0.1% are actually going to execute in a way and produce something productive.
Where do you stand on that? Like, I tend to agree. Like you mentioned, like if it's a bear market, then it's going to get crushed. But if it's a bull market, maybe it remains the same or goes higher. Or what do you think about it?
Oh, there's many lenses you can look at it. I mean, I'm looking at it at a few. Like initially, maybe earlier in the cycle, I was thinking, look, you can buy an ETF, or you can buy a MicroStrategy, and an ETF is going to charge you maybe 20 basis points or something like that per year, 0.2% to hold it. So you work that over a 20-year hold. A fair percentage of your Bitcoins are going to be lost to management fees. Whereas you could buy a MicroStrategy, and with a long-term hold, it's still got a profitable business, though that's a very small part of the AUM now. And they're going to stack sats. Number 2, they're in a situation where they can get almost next to free borrowings to buy Bitcoin. And now they've got this at the market offering where this new mechanism where as long as it's selling at a premium, they can buy more Bitcoin and issue stock, dilute the stock base, and effectively, as everyone knows, use that cash to buy Bitcoin. And that has a interesting impact because the amount of, as long as you're trading at a premium, it means there's a lower amount of Bitcoin per share than ideal. And as they issue more stock and use that cash to buy more Bitcoins, it's anti-dilutive, and the concentration of Bitcoin per share increases. And so it's kind of, it sounds a bit Rube Goldbergish as a machine, but if you look at the underlying of it, like the mechanisms, it's just opened up this completely huge gateway for fiat investors to convert into Bitcoin through this machine that concentrates more and more Bitcoins per share over time. And so I think that's the second reason why it's getting an increasing premium. And you look at that premium, it went from under 1 at the bottom of the bear to now consistently touching around 3, and it's a straight line up. And then if you look at what's happening next year with the stock, is that MicroStrategy is going to move to FASB accounting practices, where their gains on Bitcoin is considered a net yield or revenue, in which once you trip over that criteria, you are now allowed to be listed in S&P 500, and all that prevents it from being listed now is a committee decision once this accounting practice goes in. And so by the start of next year, there's a lot of people speculating that it will be listed on the S&P 500. That index is an incredible amount of money.